What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today, well, there's another Keyforge House I've not actually told you about yet. You see, yesterday we had a look at the Inspired, and I told you that there is a new Keyforge expansion which is going to be coming, well, it's going to be announced in the next day or so. And I told you that this time last year, when they revealed Worlds Collide, they revealed both the Saurian Republic and the Grand Star Alliance, which added together with the 7 houses we previously had in the first couple of expansions. And I told you that a new expansion was being announced, and that this would be a right time, a convenient time, to go ahead and actually add another house into the game. And I told you about the Inspired, but I didn't tell you about Skyborn. And I kind of need to tell you about Skyborn, though I do need to issue both a thank you and an apology as we get rolling here. You see, the image on the screen is essentially a reconstructed version of the logo that was made by the lovely Scott Zumwalt. So firstly, thank you very much to Scott for doing this, letting us use it. Secondly, apologies. Yesterday I used the Inspired logo and I was unaware that it was from Scott. Although I should have checked better, that one's entirely on me. So, quick correction here that yes, that was also essentially made by Scott yesterday. My apologies for not saying it yesterday. Thank you to Scott, because otherwise we wouldn't have a good look at the logo, and that would be kind of sad. That dude's hooked us up rather nicely indeed. So thank you very much. So what do we know about the Skyborn then? Well, basically the Skyborn, there's no set membership here. So just like we talked about with the Inspired yesterday, we're talking more Grand Star Alliance than we are talking Mars, for instance. So if we look at Mars, and you know by now I love me some Mars, Mars creatures all basically look the same. They all come from the same basic race. That's not to say every single one of them does, but they basically all do. However, if we look at something like the Grand Star Alliance, what we tend to find is that they all just come from different races. They've all been brought together to essentially work together. And that's essentially what we're talking about with Skyborn here. We're not talking about one race which has formed their own house. We're talking about a bunch of disparate creatures from all different races. And really the one thing that they have in common is they love being in the sky. To be honest with you, they love being in the sky. The sky is their world. I mean, as Inca the Spider puts it in Secrets of the Crucible, and this is where we are incidentally getting our information on Skyborn. I know it's an RPG book, but even if you have no interest whatsoever in ever playing it as an RPG, and there's a great chance I never will, it is jam-packed full of Keyforge lore that you don't get elsewhere. If you have any interest in Keyforge, and if you're watching this video, you probably do, if you haven't picked up a copy of the book yet, might I heartily suggest you go and do so at your earliest convenience. But as Inca the Spider puts it, wonderful people, but don't get between them and their ships. Always remember that the sky is their life. And that really is the hook of Skyborn, right? They are creatures that live in the sky, that live on ships, that don't come down to the ground unless they need to refuel or do something else that is rather important. And that's going to be very interesting in terms of how it plays in the game, in a TCG. I'm not entirely sure how that goes about, but I'm very excited to see it. Now, one thing that is pointed out a couple of times clearly in Secrets of the Crucible, there is the barrier, which basically means, yeah, they can run around in the sky, but they cannot ever actually escape into space. They don't go running around in space, they can't. They've got to stay, well, not grounded, they don't do grounding, but very much in the sky rather than in space. Now, we are actually given a little bit of information about this. There are 5 main groups of Skyborn, and although they all live in the sky, they're not exactly the same. So, Adagian, for instance, they like to ignite amber within atmospheric converters and basically put on these performances in the sky that look fantastical. Now, you do get a bunch of giants in Adagian, but also Jareen, and I'll be honest with you, I've been digging through Secrets of the Crucible. I cannot figure out what they are. If you know, let me know in the comments, would you? We've then got Cirrus. Now, Cirrus is actually a giant floating continent which follows an unpredictable path and has millions of beings living on it, which sounds kind of fun. Halyards, they actually provide protection from amber drakes, which are less of a problem now than they used to be, and if we do not get an amber drake card in the near future, I'm going to be very upset. Now, going back to the original Halyard who saved people from amber drakes, they do tend to use old styly crafts with rigging ropes and wooden wheels and things of that nature to hark back to their heritage. Raptrix, these are solitary creatures. They're generally one creature in a craft which is designed for speed and combat, and they may even be bonded with the ship in terms of being like a cyborg. Now, many Martians end up being Raptrix, which does make sense because they have their own little flying saucers, etc. But also, they've seen a few more since the SAV Quantum landed. Yeah, that's the Grand Star Alliance, so it does seem like a bunch of the Grand Star Alliance have gone off and been like, you know what? Skyborn, that's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it's at. And finally, Stormkin are pirates, but they follow the Raiders code, which is to say that they do not poach from each other, just like everyone else in the sky. Oh, well, that's a bit better, I suppose. Maybe. I don't know. But what is really cool about Skyborn is we've already had a Skyborn card. You see, in Worlds Collide, we got our anomalies. That is to say, these cards which were essentially sent back from the future. The whole point of anomalies are that they are supposed to be cards from future sets which are put in as anomalies in Worlds Collide. And one of them was the Red Baron. Now, even if we hadn't been explicitly shown, we would know that the Red Baron was Skyborn, just look at the card. But also, I mean, the image I've put on the screen a few times already does come from Secrets of the Crucible, and it clearly is the Red Baron, and it's in the Skyborn part of the book, so we've already seen the Red Baron. So, unlike when we looked at the Inspired, we can actually start to try and gain some knowledge of the house from this card. Now, let's be clear, you cannot look at one card and go, I know everything about the house, but we all know that houses have particular traits. We all know that shadows love their stealing. We all know that dis love their disruption. So, no, we can't tell everything about it from here, but we can certainly start to make, hopefully, some small suppositions, if that doesn't seem too rude. So, what do we have here? We've got 4 power, 1 armor. Now, the armor does make a bit of sense to me. We're told about them using technology to stay afloat, stay in the sky. We're told about them having some defensive capabilities on their ships, as you would expect. So, maybe we would get something like elusive in here. And especially if you've got ships flying around in the air, elusive, surely one of the things you think of. But armor comes in quite nicely here as well. But what really interests me here is that we've got skills that revolve around when the keys are forged. So the Red Baron, while your red key is forged, the Red Baron gains Reap, Steal 1 Amber. While your opponent's red key is forged, the Red Baron gains Elusive. So I did mention Elusive a moment ago with the whole ships flying around, that makes sense. As for the Stealing 1 Amber, he's a pirate. He is clearly from Stormkin, so I would expect that we're going to get a few Stormkin creatures and that they are all going to have some kind of stealing ability. And while we're here, it's worth pointing out that we do have the 5 different factions, I want to call them, from Skyborn, and we're likely to see similarities between the 5 of them, more so than similarities between Skyborn as a whole. So whereas the Stormkin creatures are likely to have lots of stealing, we would expect Halyards to be very good fighters and to have high power, because they're the ones which are fighting off the Amber Drakes. They're the 2 that I think are fairly obvious. The other 3, I'm not feeling quite so much in terms of exactly what they're going to do, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the Halyards are going to be good for fighting, and that the Stormkin are going to be good for stealing. Now, as it stands at the moment, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, But I do not believe we actually have a particular rule in terms of which key must be forged when. Now, in the official Keyforge rulebook, when we go to the glossary and we have a look at keys, it does tell us, well, it says that each player has one key of each color. Some card abilities may reference the color of your keys, including which of your keys are forged or unforged. But it doesn't tell us the order in which we need to forge them. Now, it does say that full details are on page 4, but if we go back and have a look at page 4, be rude if we didn't, it's literally telling us to do so, we are told that if the active player has enough amber to forge a key, they must do so. To forge a key, the active player spends amber from the amber pool on their identity card, referring it to the common supply, returning it. Then that player flips any one of their key tokens over to its forged side, indicating that the key has been forged. It does not say anything about the order in which they might be forged. Now, of course, what we might have in Skyborn is you've got a creature that's really good if your red key's forged, but another one that's really good if your yellow key's forged. So essentially what you get to do is choose which of your abilities are activated based on which of your keys you've chosen to forge. And that seems like the new hook of Skyborn and what it's going to be. You are going to have abilities tied to which of yours and your opponent's keys are forged, and that is going to bring another dimension to the game in terms of you need to try and forge the right keys to activate the abilities you need this game, while your opponent tries to forge keys to stop you having the abilities that you want. If your opponent forges their red key, they give you elusive, so they can forge one of their others. If you ask me for a prediction, and that's kind of what I do on this channel a lot, I do think Skyborn are going to be introduced in the set coming up. I think in the next day or two we're going to have an announcement of the Keyforge set. We know that, that's a fact. But I do believe that announcement will include Skyborn coming into the set, and I do think they'll come in before Inspired, purely because we've already seen what they look like, and the hook of having the particular keys forged, I do think that's what we're going to end up seeing. But that is nothing more than a prediction. Call it wishful thinking. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about Skyborn and the Red Baron and all of this good stuff, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wossy. That's where we talk Keyforge and a bunch of other games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, all kinds of fun stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.